It's good to see so many familiar so many faces that I've only seen on Zoom. I think even though there was just so many wonderful works, and I want to just talk about two of them. Kat, Kat's work is really. Hello, can you hear me? Oh, sorry. Kat's work is really interesting because there's something. My partner wrote this thing about, did her PhD about occupational labor, which is basically the invisible labor that someone does when that like an example would be like the labor of a mother that doesn't get seen when you come home and the house is clean, but you don't necessarily see that there was someone cleaning the house. And I looked at the work and I just thought there was such a wonderful legacy of how poetic the invisible traces of the things that you've done and how you've let it just very poetically make itself present. It was a way of claiming space without necessarily being aggressive about it. And I just thought it was so poetic, the way you use your material, the way you allowed the material to sort of continue to be present after. And it's just a wonderful practice, and I hope you continue to explore, and because I think the world needs artists who think like you. Should I?
Yeah. So, Kat, do you want to come up and do your... Great.
Okay, I'm not very good at doing these things, so please bear with me. And I think I have far too many slides for a short 5 minutes, and it's super hot in here, so I'm going to speed up and probably skip a lot of things. But I guess I'm gradually getting to know my practice in a way that kind of encourages me to keep making. But there's so much that I don't know about in my practice, and probably will never know. Because the making comes first and the thinking after, and you're always kind of chasing the tail of your practice, or at least I feel I am. And it's this idea of experimenting and playing that keeps that kind of unknown going. And I'm just hoping that that kind of like continues for as much as I can, I'm around to keep making. I have a very intuitively led practice. Exploring play and problems and transformation through installation, object making, and drawing. And there is transformation, but I think there's also this element of what you see is what you get. And there's something kind of straightforward about it in some ways, and that's something that's kind of really important to me alongside this idea of like transformation or changing the unfamiliar into something more, changing the familiar into something more unfamiliar. My practice is becoming more expansive. I'm making objects, I'm drawing, I'm making installations, but I'm also writing, and I'm also making some videos as well. And I'm realizing the more I make that each material and medium, of course, has a different voice. And play has really helped me kind of understand this and want to give, each thing the voice that it deserves. I called this installation and the project for the Ivan Juritz Prize Problems to Play. But I could probably call my whole practice Problems to Play, as it really describes my whole process of making. I think of problems and play as this cyclical thing, play creating problems and play solving problems, and then play creating more problems, and then the problems requiring play. And there's a kind of seriousness of play that I really want to hold on to, because I think it really roots each thing that I make. We also unlearn play as we grow older, but it teaches us so much. So to kind of capture that learning and kind of go back to the roots of play. Feels really fundamental. I think of play as being this really undefinable thing, where you kind of have this loss of self-consciousness, and there's kind of, I don't know, there are lots of things you kind of have that within, but I think art, it can be quite rare to have those experiences of loss of self-consciousness, and yet I think it's really crucial to making art. And the play kind of dissolves expectations and goals, and that kind of just keeps you ticking along as well. Through problems in play, I'm kind of challenged and I'm surprised and I experience and accept failure. And I also learn to trust, and that's trust in my practice, trust in my process, my materials and myself. I also think making work can make you laugh and can give a sense of joy, and that shouldn't be underestimated. It also kind of heightens the fragility and precarity of some of the objects and things that I make. And I'm also interested in not knowing being a space for intense creative experiment as well. For some of the slides, because I've got so many, I'm just going to read the materials list, because I think they kind of really do ground a lot of my making. And they can kind of range from personal everyday objects to things that I kind of find immediately around me, the found, the recycled, and sometimes the unconventional. So in this work, the materials are climbing chalk balls, pigment, polystyrene, sandpaper, glue sticks, resistance bands, card, a disco ball motor, paper, tinfoil, marbles, a wood offcut, and thread. The learning and the joy from play kind of makes up for the exposure that I feel when I present my practice and when it leaves the studio and suddenly has to be exhibited. And I'm really interested in this concept of exposure. And to kind of come back to the chalk balls that I mentioned in the materials list, I really like rock climbing. And exposure in climbing is this space around and below you as you climb higher. But this exposure for me feels so much scarier than the height or the risk of falling. The so-called empty space envelops you as you work against gravity. But the empty space isn't empty at all. It is heavy and it's present. And I can feel it more than I feel the rock. And noticing this requires a shift in my mindset and a realigned focus to bring me back into my body. And this is just as true in my making practice as it is in my climbing practice. And maybe especially in my drawing, which I feel is the real kind of constant in all the making that I do. This piece is called Ball Formations. And it is made from bubble wrap. So they're bubble wrap balls covered in layers of drafts of my MFA critical studies essay. Parcel tape, fruit and vegetable nettings, thread, wood offcuts, nails, and tinfoil. A lot of my work for the last few years has been presented on the floor, but I make pretty much all of my work on the floor, even the drawings on paper. So it kind of feels like the right place for it. I've spent so much time trying to get it on the wall because that feels like what you're supposed to do, but it just doesn't work for me and it just doesn't seem to communicate what I need the work to communicate. It's often quite small in scale and can feel quite odd to encounter on the floor as a grown person. But if you can crouch down with it or if you can sit in a chair amongst it, it feels very different to towering over it. There's also something in my work about being porous or resisting boundary, which gives the floor and the wall and the ceilings, the light that's coming in, the air that's moving around, more meaning and becomes a medium in itself. So the materials for this one is tinfoil, concrete rock, marble, critical studies essay drafts, chalk balls, pigment, and a pencil drawing on sugar paper. I'll skip this slide, but I'm basically really interested in how sculpture and drawing can come together. So very recently, as of last week, I had my degree show at the Slade, and I've decided to put some images of it in because my installation for this prize, Problems to Play, was the last kind of installation I made before it came to degree show. And there was so much I kind of learned from doing that installation that made it into my degree show. The space is obviously different. A lot of the work changes constantly, so the work really needs to become site-specific to kind of take on new energy. So in this space that I had for degree show, the rolls of sandpaper extended to the height of the room, the objects remained small and floor-based, the drawing interplayed with the objects, and the changing natural light became a potent addition. In its, oops. Oh, sorry, I must have clicked something. There we go. Yeah, and so it's this changing light, the shadows, the reflections, that have made aspects of the installation multiply or extend and fill the space differently. That was a real kind of treat for me to see with my degree show. And the kind of different kinds of problems that they create in the different ways you can play with these aspects that you don't necessarily have the same control over. In these subtle changes also encounter or take on the kind of physicality of the works as well in some ways. With the sandpaper, the picture on the left was when it was first installed. And then the second one on the right is at the end of degree show. Sorry. And this kind of movement, I really enjoy how it kind of denotes time. This picture, just very quickly, it's just another example of the way the light was interplaying with a lot of the works. And it's really important for me for the work to be alive in some way and have a vitality. And it's these uncontrollable elements that I think really add life to work. And the more that I make, the more I realize that a balance between my hand in the work and the absence of my hand is a really exciting space of unexpected discovery, tension, problems, and a continued learning to trust. 2 slides just very quickly of like different ways I was drawing, so directly onto the wall with tools that I'd made, and on the right, some of the traces of accidents and marks and works being moved around. I really think of drawing in an expanded way, and that has started to include video work. So this is an image of the space where you could see the main installation on the left and the video installation on the right. And the video installation was using tools I'd made to draw with and watching them being used to make a drawing. And for my final few slides, I thought I'd not so much talk about work that I've intentionally made or less intentionally made, but actually talk about the process of deinstalling as making. I kind of mentioned that I was quite uncomfortable seeing work in some sort of settled state of being exhibited. And it's this kind of pause amongst the constant change and transformation that I think is the thing that really roots my work. But there's something about deinstalling work that feels like relief to me, and learning the importance of being in that settled state has been quite fundamental through showing my work a little bit more through my degree. Allowing the time and the space that the work deserves to just be. But deinstalling isn't just a relief. It also feels super generative to me. The act of removal and seeing what remains opens new streams of thought and inspiration. And I find the exhibition, or end of the exhibition, more exciting sometimes than the beginning. So this slide shows tinfoil that was torn off the wall during the deinstallation of my degree show. And I just loved the way the shape and the form fell. And I couldn't have made those forms myself, and that feels really exciting to me. Again, this kind of letting go of control in some ways. There's an ephemerality with that, but it's also significant for new ideas, surprising myself, and having a final play at the end of an exhibition. And that feels really fundamental to sustaining my practice. So I am done. I've probably gone on for way too long. But I do have a video that just shows some of my work in motion. Hopefully it'll let me play it, but we'll soon find out. It's only like 10 seconds or something, so. Okay, it's 21 seconds, but. Oh, I do stay. Oh, sorry. Yes.
That was really great. And the video was really beautiful and shows it in the poetry that you show it all of the work. I'm going to